One adjustment, for example, has been to scale for surface area to account for additional heat loss of body size. And then another adjustment has been relative to condition outside of thermoneutral temperature. So there are adjustments that consider, low temperature, especially low temperature. So there are no adjustments for heat stress because obviously calves are not as sensitive as, lactating animals or older cows are in general. Okay. So this is the main recipe screen of NDS of the calf model. But before going there, I just want to talk about some, technicalities of the model, or conditions, I should say. So obviously we need to, select for the young calf to launch the model. But other important conditions are also related to the feeds. Okay, we have classified calf feeds because obviously their energy estimations are completely different than the other feeds that we normally give to older animals. And within these calf feeds, we can select either milk or starter. Okay, and then for the starter, we also have the physical form, and I'll talk about this later. Okay, so if we launch the model, then obviously, as we know, everything will start with the animal inputs. And obviously, since the model is not, or the research, I should say, is not as advanced as it is with the older animals, the inputs are less. However, they are extremely important in terms of body weight, not only as birth weight, but also in terms of age, because the two age and birth weight and present weight are going to basically affect all the requirements. So from maintenance, especially to growth. Okay, so these are again the most important inputs. So calf birth weight, age, body weight, mature body weight, and then we have average daily gain. Okay, so and we have like we do with the older animals, we can select the growth system, or we can actually unselect the target growth system and leave this cell, free to be changed, to be modified by the user. So this is, the standard real, I call it average daily gain from 18 to 56. So in this case, 18 is the present age of this calf. Okay. So this is if I select the target growth system. So this is the average daily gain real, okay, to reach the target growth system of doubling the weight at 56 days. Okay. So right now I have this 18 days old calf, okay, weighing 105.8 pounds, okay, with an expected body weight of 110. So it's slightly underweighted, okay. And then I have the standard if average daily gain, okay, from 0 to 56, and then from 56 to 152. So in this number here is a little bit less because I assumed, okay, we assumed that the that doubling, the birth weight is distributed homogeneously in the 56 days. Okay. Since at 18 days old, this calf is a little bit underweight, then obviously the needed average daily gain is slightly larger than this one. Okay. So I hope that was clear. Another important aspect is that I can select, growth plan as standard or accelerated. So I just switched now to accelerated, and you'll see the change in average daily gain. Okay, so while with the standard one, we double the weight. So in this case, from 84 with the standard to 168 at 56 days. With the accelerated one, I would have 191. So it's about 15-20% more than the standard body weight. And then I'm not going through the other information because again it's simpler than older cows. But as I said, the environment is the one that matters the most in terms of adjusting the maintenance requirements. And again, the temperature where it's adjusted, it goes from 60 Fahrenheit, so about 15, 18 Celsius, to minus 20 Fahrenheit, which corresponds to about minus 30 degrees Celsius. Okay? So that's the range. Obviously, the lower the temperature, the higher the maintenance requirements adjustment for these animals. So let's move on, and I'll start now talking about the recipe screen. Okay, so it's a little bit different in terms of data that you can see, and obviously the location of the main numbers is still the same. But again, as I said before, we need to classify these feeds correctly. Okay, and then I'll just spend a few minutes on these numbers here. Okay. Now, predicting intake, as you know, it's one of the most complex issue with ruminants, okay, with animals in general, but ruminants especially. So we have a couple of differences with older animals in this case. So this one, it's actually not a real prediction, but it's more a projection of what the calf needs right now to reach 100% of the requirements in terms of metabolizable energy. Okay, and that's given the intake of the starter that I entered, in the cell above. So right here. Okay, so basically, with some calculation and subtracting the intake of the starter that somehow I need to measure in my calves, okay, the system will tell you what the milk in terms of dry matter intake is, in terms of body weight percent, and then in terms of range, okay, to have the solids content of the fluid between 12.5 and 14%. So again, this is the range of the fluid milk to have a good osmolality and to avoid any gastrointestinal issues. Okay. Then going back to this side, I have the dry matter intake. Okay, and in this case is a prediction. Okay, and this prediction is based mainly on body weight and age. Okay, and again there is an expected range of this intake. So there is not a lot of work in terms of predicting starter intake, but in the last few years we've seen a few papers relating this to characteristics maybe of the diet, if it's a texture, pellet, or TMR, and there are some contradicting results. Okay, so at this stage we have decided only to include body weight and age in this prediction, and obviously that might change in the future. Then another few minutes about this. So then we have here what we call cumulative calf starter intake of dry matter, or NFC. Okay. Now the reason why we have these numbers is because we base the metabolizable energy accounting for the starter, considering few papers from Quigley and co-authors from 2019. So those series of papers, so there are 2 or 3 papers that we actually take into consideration, because it's been shown basically that the total intake of the NFC, okay, and obviously with NFC in this case we mainly include starch and sugars, are going to affect the digestibility, okay, of the starter. So how much the calf is going to digest of the starter, and obviously then the energy that the calf can actually get, metabolize from that starter. So that's kind of if you think about the higher the intake, that's like a dynamic a number that is going to be calculated in the background, and I'll show you what I mean with this later. So this basically means that at day 18, okay, the model is predicting a cumulative intake of NFC of 1 pound, around 1 pound. Obviously, it's very little, but we know that the first couple of weeks intake of starter, it's hardly can hardly be measured. Okay? So this is also to underline that the present calculations of ME of the starter in calves might be overestimated, okay? Especially if we consider the NRC estimations, because they would consider a constant digestibility, a constant digestible energy, metabolizable energy of that starter. But obviously, you cannot expect that a 2 weeks old calf will be able to get the same energy from a starter than one that is already eating 1 kg of starter or 2 pounds of starter every day and is older than that. Okay. So these are again the author that I was referring to. Now moving on. Sorry. Okay. So just to give you an idea of what I mean with cumulative. Okay. So these are numbers that I got from one of those papers. Okay. And among the variables of all the studies quickly analyzed, okay, you notice that NFC was the one relating with high correlation to digestibility. Okay, so he actually calculated the number of kg or pounds in parentheses needed of NFC to reach the highest or the inflection point of digestible dry matter, digestible crude protein, either extract, NDF, NFC, and metabolizable energy. Okay, so according to these numbers, okay, a calf would need a cumulative NFC of about 15 pounds, okay, to reach the highest level of digestibility in terms of dry matter. Okay? And these numbers are variable, and you'll see actually that the highest one is with NDF. Okay? So that means that the moment that calf will reach full development in terms of ruminant, so in terms of being able to ferment fiber, will actually be the last compared to the other components of the diet. So at first he will be able to digest NFC, crude protein, dry matter in general, but it will reach full digestibility of full fermentability of NDF the latest. So in terms of, just to give an idea of where this data come from, so this is the cumulative NFC intake, and this is the dry matter digestibility, so which is this number here. So at about 7 kg, okay, right here basically, or 15 pounds, this guy here will reach full, he will be able to digest, most of that dry matter. Just to give you more information, so these two refer to the type of model. So BL stands for broken line, and this is for exponential. And this is the type of starter. So if it's a pellet, textured, or TMR. So you'll see that in the case of texture, so we have a higher dry matter digestibility, but I wouldn't focus too much on this because there was not significance among these different physical characteristics of the starter. Okay? just wanted to show you the other ones. So this is for metabolizable energy, so which is basically about here. So you'll need 14 kg or 30 pounds of NFC, okay, to reach again the highest amount of ME from that starter. And then I wanted to show you the NDF graph, just to show you like how much variability I have, okay, in terms of observations. And these are all different calves, okay. I think there were like 3 or 4 studies, 3 or different 4 studies from all this, you know. Obviously they were adjusted per study. And in this case, interesting to see is that the TMR actually has the lowest number here in terms of digestibility, but the highest will be reached with the pellet around here. So in this case, you'll see that there is quite a significant difference, even if there is still a lot of variability between the physical structure of the starter. And if you remember, you know, your 101 or maybe 201 ruminant nutrition, you'd also remember that the scratching factor is one of the factors affecting also rumen development. So we're not talking here only about, you know, butyric acid coming from sugars or propionic acids, but also that scratching factor from the pellet probably is higher here than the other starters. So just to, before we go into NDS, I have completed the first part. Actually, one of my students back in South Africa has completed the first part of a trial that we finished on calves. Okay, we had a company producing a yeast. So I will not make the name because the data is not official. But I wanted to show you the daily intake, okay, of 80 calves from day 5 to 89. Okay? So in South Africa there is the strategy of weaning calves around 90 days. Okay? And obviously they don't expect to double the birth weight, at 56 days, but they probably do it, around 80 days. But that's not the point. Here, I just wanted to show you the huge variability that we can have in terms of intake. This was a pellet with about 35–40% NFC. The huge variability that we can have of intake of those calves. So these are all individual calves and their intake in these 80 days. So luckily we have statistical software that we can kind of make sense of those numbers. So besides feeding or not a yeast, we also try to put an environmental stress on those calves. So we were feeding the milk replacer at different times every day for the stress group. And you'll see actually that the feeding the milk replacer at different schedule every day for this group actually caused, had a consequence, a negative consequences also in the yeast, in the starter intake. So this is to show you, one, the huge variability, and two, how the management and the environment will actually affect the intake of those calves. So again, how complex is the prediction of intake in these animals? So just to finish, I'll show you that there was not much difference in terms of yeast. So only from day 70 there was some significance with the yeast having some higher intake. So you'll see again that this animal, reached 1 kg, so about 2.2 pounds of starter intake after 60 days. So maybe in US or North American condition, that 2 pounds would be reached earlier. Okay. So this is the same calves, but in terms of growth, and you'll see how the 40 kg, were doubled basically after 65–70 days. So again, And the reason was also because of the milk replacer, which was, I think it was about 20% protein, 20% fat, so maybe a little bit lower than what in North America is fed. Okay, now I want to go to NDS and just to show you a few other things. Okay, and later Dave will show you some real example, but I just want to talk to you about few other numbers in the main screen. Okay, Dave, can you confirm that you can still hear me okay? Or anybody?
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
we can
Okay.
still hear you. Hey,
Okay,
Emiliano,
good.
can you answer
Yes.
one question?
Yes.
That comparison of the textured feed versus the TMR, was the TMR like a conventional wet silage or dry hay?
I don't remember. So those was not just one trial. So was different trials. So yeah, we need to see the original trials. So
Can I interact, guys?
yes, please.
The TMR was a dry TMR, including only hay, and not wet TMR, including silages.
Very good.
Yes, now that I remember, actually that they were talking in the paper that the inclusion of hay would actually did reduce intake and did reduce not only intake but also amount of metabolizable energy that the calves were able to get. Yeah.
Super. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. So moving on, I'll switch to English systems. So this is again the main recipe screen. Okay, and in this case I have a whole milk. Okay, no amount right now, a calf starter, and then a milk replacer of 26 protein and 20% fat. Okay, now remember I told you this is the amount that I should include. Okay, given the amount of starter that I have, so about 0.4 pounds. Okay, to be able to reach the 100% of metabolizable energy. Okay, so I'll stop there for a second. So I will not increase this because I wanted to show you something else. And then obviously I have here the diet evaluation with highlighted the numbers that we think are among the most important ones. Okay, then I have a graph where I can see the trend of what where the calf should be if he's going or if she's going to double the weight of 56 days. Okay, I can also make this period longer until 22 weeks, but for now we'll consider only this. And then here obviously I can see that my calf is, as I mentioned before, is slightly underweight. Okay, here, as with the older animals, I have a small window where I can change some of those numbers. Right now I'm following as the average daily gain the target growth system, as I mentioned before. Okay, and then going back here, basically I have the average daily gain that would be allowed right now in terms of desired. So considering that my calf is a little bit underweight, so I should have 1.6 pound per day, and this is if the calf wasn't underweight, I should have 1.5, and this is what I'm getting right now in terms of ME and average daily gain from protein with this diet in this specific day. Okay, now the main feature of, not the main feature, but an important feature of this calf model is that it's not only a tool that allows you to evaluate what you're feeding on day 18, but our objective was actually to give an idea of what we should feed or how we should feed our ingredients from now to winning. Okay. Now and I'll go through these numbers in a second, but again, these are the numbers that I showed before. And in the background, the calculations are done daily, okay? But these are shown in terms of weekly averages, okay? So the program, okay, the feeding program also assumes that I will be feeding milk replacer from day 4. So meaning that in the first 3 days, colostrum will be fed, and I'll show you a graph later. And then I have on this column the powder, okay, the water that I will need to add to this powder, okay, to reach this specific milk replacer with this much of solid contents, okay, and then the milk replacer as a total fluid split in the specific meal, okay. So right now I'm indicating 2 meals per day, and again 56 days to weaning, and both of these can be obviously edited, okay. The same in the same graph, in the same table, I see the starter intake, okay, as predicted, okay, in terms of dry matter and as fed, okay, and then we have the daily gains in terms of energy and protein. Now I have a few other options, okay. So obviously you'll see here that the system, okay, assumes first of all that the same amount is fed up to weaning of obviously I'm talking about milk replacer, because the system assumed that there will be an increase in starter intake, okay. And this is based on the current situation. So at day 18, okay, my calf weighs 105, okay, 0.8 with this 83.8 birth weight. Right now is growing, or is assumed to grow this much. Now this is the current situation, and this number in parentheses here, 1.9, okay, is the target growth index, which basically tells me that this calf, if she keeps eating the same diet, will not be obviously doubling the weight at 56 days, but it will be again underweight. If I want to see the optimal, so meaning will reach the double of that birth weight, then the system, by clicking on the optimal situation, on the optimal program, will suggest what to feed in terms of milk replacer. Now I want to just open a parenthesis here. Now you see that I have here a whole milk column, okay, and also that I included some all milk here. So I can have, you know, a farm where maybe I'm able to feed a pound per day of milk. So obviously these assume that there will be 1 pound of milk every day. Okay. Now the system will tell me, okay, now you are feeding a total, or you should feed a total of 1.831 of dry matter intake of milk. Okay, and this is the sum of both the replacer and the fluid milk. And this is what I should feed in terms of milk replacer to reach 100% of the energy required. So it's 1.706, and I'll go to the replacer and replace this to 1.706. Okay, and now my system tells me, okay, now you're reaching, you know, 100% of energy. And with the addition of all milk, okay, now I also have this column, you know, that is being filled, okay, with all milk, and then I have again the all milk and the powder. Now if I switch from current to optimal, basically I won't see much of a change, because I actually increase the milk here to 100% requirements. So there will not be a change basically between the current and the optimal. Now I just want to go back to before, just to show you all the different scenarios. Just a second. Okay, so I have again the current scenario selected. I only have milk replacer, okay, no all milk. Now the system, okay, can also give me two more options within each scenario. So we can have the flat milk supply, which is as what I showed you before, with or without all milk. And then I can have also the weekly milk supply. And in this case, okay, the supply of milk will consider, okay, the body weight. So in the sense that there will be initially an increase in the amount suggested of milk replacer, and then a decrease because the animal will start eating more starter. Okay, I'll show you that in a figure, which is much more clear to understand. And then I also have another option, which is the fixed one. And the fixed, basically what it does, just consider what I entered right here. So it's 1.8 of pounds of S-fed of milk replacer, and it's just transfer that 1.8 powder of milk replacer across the whole weaning period. So there are no basically suggestions, if I should say, by the system, but it just lets you evaluate what the allowable allowable gain in terms of energy and protein would be if I just kept feeding that 1.8 plus the predicted started intake. Okay. Now going back to the weekly, I just wanted to show you everything graphically. So this is the body weight, so where my calf is right now, okay, and where it should be at 56 days if I either follow the optimal growth or the current growth. So you'll see here the difference, which is actually very small in this case. So the same trends can be also shown in terms of feeding program. So remember I told you also that we assume that milk replacer is fed from day 4. So in this case, the system assumes but also suggests that colostrum is fed in day 1. So in this case, it's 7.6 quarts. So it should be around 20% of body weight. And then colostrum is again fed day 2 and day 3 in 2 different meals, about 15% of body weight in 2 meals. And then from day 4, we have the trends suggested by the feeding program in terms of milk. So remember I had selected the weekly feeding program, so I'll have the same weekly amount of milk. So if it's the current or optimal, and the same thing for the starter intake. If it's the current one, so the prediction will be based on the amount that I entered here. So right now it's 0.4 pounds, okay, at day 18. So the prediction will be made based on that. Okay. Or we'll have the optimal starter intake, okay, if I want to reach you know, the target growth index of 2. So if I want to double the weight until the end. And again, you can see also the decrease on the milk replacer based on the requirements and based on the sum, basically in terms of energy coming from the milk and the starter. And here below you'll see all the gain allowed by the protein and the energy that I have in my diet. I think I'm done with this. Then obviously anything else here is pretty much, in this window here is pretty much the same as for the other animal categories. And please, if you have questions, feel free to ask. But I believe Dave now will show you some more examples.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to jump over to my NDS and look at a couple of examples for today. One other thing I wanted to bring in real quick. Thanks for the presentation, Emiliano. Great job showing all the features and functions there. Kurt, is there any other questions we need to discuss right there?
Haven't seen any new ones.
Okay. Let me increase my volume just a tad bit. Okay, I brought in some examples of using the system. And so what I wanted to do was just show, and I brought those into the demo diet. These are existing situations on dairies. Let me just open those two up and I can go back and forth. And let me go open the other one real quick. So I want to look at the first dairy example that we have. It's been a ongoing frustration on a dairy, looking at, we're feeding a milk replacer that is tested. We test the tank, and then as long as we're describing this as a milk product, you can see the dry matter. We're hitting about 13.5 on solids, and that's the target. We're usually pretty close within that. We'll go ahead and test this calf tank that goes out to the calves, and we will check it. And the last time we tested it, it was 25-18, so 25 protein, 18 fat. And you can see the frustration is that we're getting two pounds solids into these calves. They do not want to feed a high level of solids. They've heard some problems. They're really working on different grain mixes to get these gains in these calves. And as I can look at the data, here is the data from the dairy. So again, these guys are making good milk production, about a 2,500 cow dairy, doing a great job on the cow side of it. The calves we have been measuring, I think the sheet breaks off here. So this is, some old data from 2020. We don't have the complete set of data here, but you can see the average weight of the calves at 68 days. So we're weaning them at 60. They stay in the huts a little bit longer, but we're not able to break that 1.5, 1.6 calf gain. And we're recording birth weights on calves. And we've had a discussion at that dairy as far as looking at calving E sires, and maybe we're trending too much to calving E sires. 77 pounds of the average of those birth weights on those calves is quite small. We don't have the blood proteins put in here, but they're measuring those. We just don't have them recorded regularly. The cattle, by the time they come back into the dairy 60 days pre-calving, we do get trailer weights on them. So you can see we've got 1,399, 1,400 pounds, 60 days pre-calving. So we can gain 1.5 pounds or so on 60 days. We should be right in there at 1,370 at calving, 1,350 here, 1,337. So we have the average daily gain over the period of the calf, but we're getting a very good compensatory gain, but it's not like getting that first gain in our baby calves. So it's been a struggle. The model predicts pretty much the 1.5, 1.6 that we're seeing. Looking through at another example where we worked intently with some producers, where we basically are looking at feeding fresh pen milk. So what we do at that dairy is, let me jump over here, is what we do is we take the milk from the tank with the, they're having some issues pasteurizing colostrum. So what we've been doing is using basically the tank milk from the fresh pens at the dairy. And so we're running about a 4-3 and a 2 protein, 3-2 protein. And so putting that back into this example, we're feeding 5 quarts and we step them up gradually. The hardest number to find is trying to find 30-day starter intake on these calves. So with what we've collected from the dairy, we hardly even start feeding until week 2.5 or 3 weeks of age, and they'll nibble at it, but they're getting a lot of intake from the milk. But we're able to get 1.9 to 2.0 gains on these calves. You know, even through this winter, we've been able to stay above 1.9, and that's birth weight measured, weaning weight measured for each calf. And so the model does a great job of showing the prediction of different milks that you use, delivering the energy and protein through those. And I think what I found in the field is we've focused really on protein in these animals. And I think part of our biggest issue, especially in the Rocky Mountain states, I'm sure it's the same in the Northeast and upper Midwest, is the fat content, making sure that we have enough fat. The discussion that we had at another dairy last week was if we start using a Jersey calf, and what are we going to feed a Jersey calf? And so it may end up being pasteurized colostrum and fresh cow tank milk to give us closer to a 30-30 milk fat and protein on that milk to get a calf that can withstand winter temperatures and give us a 1.65 average daily gain on jerseys. So just those 2 quick examples. Again, Emiliano did a great job looking at some of the features and talking to different users. I know one of the good users up in the Northeast is telling me unless you can get 2 2/4 pounds of solids into those calves, you really can't get anywhere close to that 2 pound of gain. We are doing a 14-day weaning here to where we take them off of milk. They stay in calf hut one week longer, and then they're in a small transition group of 8 for 2 weeks, and then they go to a 32 head pen from there.
Say, Dave.
Yes.
So on that first demo herd compared to this demo herd, what is the days of weaning? Start weaning, finish weaning.
Exactly the same. So everybody's in the 56 or that week period between, 56 is the target, so they're at somewhere between 54 and 62. And again, most of the management, we're doing the same now. We're basically putting, leaving calves in huts for a week, after weaning to try to, increase starter intake. This dairy basically goes from pen, single calf hut, 1 week, grain only, and then it's moved to a pen of 40 head. Whereas these guys, we had the big talk, and what they're doing is they're going from single calf huts to super huts with trainers. We had a wreck with trying to do the little tiny lockups, and so we're doing the set of 6 to 8 calves in the super huts for 2 weeks, and the producer is getting individual weights going into those super huts and group weights going out. And it's really kind of neat because we're getting 2 pounds of gain in those calves in that 14-day period.
Yeah, you mentioned compensatory growth on that first demo herd. I'm curious if you've noticed any first lactation production or health differences besides body weights being nearly similar. You know, that epigenetic thing.
Yeah, and so, reviewing the data and looking at that, the best heifers are going to be the ones that have the average daily gain increase. Dairy 2, we're basically marking calves that are in the lowest 15% of the individual calf weight. We're marking those on a tag. And we are getting some good gains, and they are like 23 months age at first calving. Now, this guy, we'll look at an example before, but those are calving in at 21 months of age. A little too early for me. I'd love for him to go back to 22, but I think we moved him back 2 weeks in the last 6 months. But Dairy 2 is calving these things, and they're every bit as heavy at 21 months of age. Again, I think it's a little early, but not my decision at the farm. Okay, so Kurt, I think we'll jump into the next presentation unless there are some questions, other questions that can be answered.
Yeah, there was a technical one. If you go back to that growth chart in red, the fine print in red was indicating current weight at 264. It's kind of confusing. Current age says 30 days, current weight says 265. If that's...
Yeah, there is a, yeah. No, there is a like a label issue that we just fixed. So
Okay.
Don't worry, that's not, yeah, you're right. So that's not the true value.
Update, very good.
Yeah, we'll fix that.
It is a wrong conversion to metric.
Okay.
From metric.
So it's kind of our fault for using that crazy empirical system, I know.
I think there is another question about this.
Yeah, if you want to read it.
So the question is, what weight are they calving in at?
So on the accelerated growth, is that the question? Because they're going back to the dairy. I have a slide on that. They're going back to the dairy around 50 days to 60 days pre-calving, and they're weighing 1,400 pounds. So 2 years ago, we had an extreme problem because we were growing weight and not frame. So this has been a real fun herd to work with, a lot of animals in there, but they were having, if you look at average daily gain, which is a great number to have, but it describes something I don't want. I want frame growth in these heifers. 2 years ago at this area, we were basically putting a lot of weight on, and now we're putting a lot of frame on, and that goes into the whole heifer discussion we'll have later, trying to grow a heifer on the right protein to energy ratio. The model does a great job doing that. But these are coming in at 1,400 pounds plus the 50 days. So I kind of joke around and say, even on my rations, they should be able to gain 1¼ pound. So another 60 days, they should calve in, and, you know, postpartum after fetus and conceptus, you know, placenta, everything, they should lose maybe 90 pounds. So we're probably talking about 380 postpartum weight on this group. Somebody asked the question, so I do have that slide. This pertains to that dairy. They're calving at 21 months of age. Peak milk is 89. Average is 83 for the 183. The 305 ME, of course, is basically looking at throwing 3 months of growth on that. The 24,000 on milk is probably, you know, a good 4,000 below mature. And so that's that whole discussion. We're trying to get them moved up to 22.
There's a technical question on the composite mix. Do the individual ingredients of that composite mix need to be set, have their classification set to calf in order for the model to operate properly?
I can respond to this question. The best would be to convert the composite to a single fees through the appropriate function, so we can classify only the composite feed as a calf feed in order to make the model to work properly.
Yeah, the same thing is when you have a TMR, right, Hermano?
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. So there is a function in the composite or in the mix screen where you can create a feed from an ingredient from a composite, and that is the way to include the composite within the calf model.
So for my benefit, do we classify each individual feed as calf or just the composite?
Just the composite, just the aggregate ingredients after you converted the composite to an ingredient. You do not need to reclassify each single ingredient within the composite, because you can get the final classification when you handle the ingredients from the composite.
Super, thank you.
So an easy way to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab the calf grower as a single part of the ration. I can open into recipes, go into this. This is what I just saved. I called it grower. And then if I right mouse click on that recipe, I can create this ingredient, create ingredient by the recipe. So I'm going to take this recipe and create it as an ingredient. And then from here, it would be a concentrate. And then I could call it my calf grower. Maybe you better put a date on that. And then from here, I can go back and include it and classify it as a calf feed.
Yes, you can open this new feed from the recipe, jump to the feeds section, classify it as calf feed, and save again.
All right, it appears right here.
Yes,
And so
open it.
I'll open it. So the classification is right down here, and it's something people are not real familiar with. So classification and calf feed right here. Starter. That would be a textured. And say okay.
And save again.
Now all I have to do is save on top of it. Now I can go and it will be available for me right here. And then I can include that as my 0.5. So again, appreciate you you guys over in the room and office training guys over here in the NDS office. I appreciate that. Okay, so just doing that, that shows a great example of the two, of the whole system, the feeding program, the evaluation of that. So if there's more questions, we can keep answering those individually. But I think what we'll do, go ahead, Kurt.
There's just one generic question here about, in silo TMR research. I don't know. I'm sure there's some out there, but not within our group probably.
So a friend of mine was a beef nutrition guy who's PhD, and he gave me an article from the Gut Symposium. Gosh, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago. I wished I would have sent that out to our group, but it was about including dry forage. They were either using straw or hay at 4%, starting at day 45, and then they were looking at rumen pH and population of rumen bacteria. And if they included a small amount of hay in TMR or in calf feeds, starting at day, I think it was 45 in the study, they did there was less variation of pH in, these baby calves, ruminal, during the weaning period, and of course there was a exponential increase in numbers of bacteria, which were all fiber digesters. And that's something we've played around with on some big facilities, but using dry hay, and trying to target rows of calves in calf huts, some with good results. I'm not sure the ensiled feeds have ever worked that well.